I hope you had a amazing Tuesday. Today I'm going to be going through this super good article on Wired that I just read. I know it's old; it's from 2019. Great, Chris, you're bringing up the past, but it's really well written, and since nobody's talking about this yet in public discourse, I think you should all read this article. If you want to save some time, skip the video. Links in the description, so go ahead and do that. Okay, alternative meat trounces animal meat's massive inefficiencies. Opinion: animal meat production is slow, rigid, and wasteful. Plant and cell-based meat production is swift, nimble, and sustainable. Now, before we get into the article, I just want to bounce over to a really good tweet here. So, Neil deGrasse Tyson here has said that meat production in the U.S. is staggeringly efficient. For example, across all 50 states, we hatch, raise, kill, distribute, and eat 1 million chickens per hour. That's pretty fucking insane. But here's the thing. Meat production runs at a staggering scale and speed. We've done really well at figuring out how to kill a bunch of animals at one time. Close to 10 billion animals a year. But in terms of the actual protein efficiency, meat, eggs, and dairy are staggeringly inefficient, losing between 75 and 97% of protein in conversion from feed. So if you have an animal and it eats the feed, you're going to lose 97% of that protein. Here you can see the protein efficiency of meat and dairy production. And the crazy thing is, we've built this amazingly efficient system in one aspect, right? And that aspect is, how fast can we kill shit? But the actual thing we should be looking at is, how much efficiency can we get out of our protein? What can we eat that, gives us the nutrients we need, and we don't have to overeat stuff and make ourselves sick? So this is super, super important to understand where the industry is going and how you can make billions of dollars on making things more efficient. It's kind of like driving an electric car versus a gas car, right? You waste all of the fuel propelling the vehicle. It's only a small percentage, maybe 20-30% of the fuel goes into actually turning the wheels of the car, versus, because most of it's lost as heat, right? Versus an electric vehicle, you get that direct power to the wheels from the motor, and it's not lost burning off all the fossil fuels. And so you have this super massive efficiency just in the drivetrain alone. So it's really the same principles that are applying here to our meat future. And this is what is going to make people who invest in this space billions and billions of dollars. These companies are going to do so well. So one of the strongest selling points of plant-based meat is clean meat. One of the strongest selling points of plant-based and clean meat is the efficiency of production. The conversion of inputs to outputs is vastly more streamlined than cycling calories through an animal. Lesser appreciated, but perhaps more economically compelling, is also the improved market efficiency. Far less time and waste, and far greater responsiveness to consumer demand for a range of products and species. Supercharged time saver. No pregnancy, no birth, no raising, no slaughter. Imagine you had to raise some cows, right? Oh, I'm really hungry. I want to have a hamburger. Okay, fuck. Let's grow some plants. Takes a couple years. Let's feed some cows. Takes how many years you need for that cow to grow up? You gotta wait a few more years. Okay, cool. We're at 5 years now. Oh, good. Let's kill this cow. Oh, great. We can only use like 5% of the actual meat to make a hamburger, because the rest of it's like bones and fat and other shit. So, yeah, that's pretty inefficient, right? You're wasting a ton of money and a ton of time just to get a simple hamburger. So imagine the predicament of a cattle rancher trying to decide how many cows to impregnate this season. Current market conditions, the price of beef or feed, do him no good. He's forced to look into a crystal ball and predict demand fully 2 to 3 years into the future. Like, if you have a crystal ball into the future, then please, I will give you millions of dollars. I do not. Since overall supply will affect prices, he must also anticipate every other rancher's possible calculations. Okay? So if you're competing as a farmer against everybody else, A, you don't know what the market price is going to be to sell your beef in 3 years' time. And you don't know what Joe down the road's doing either. Like, he might decide to undercut you to get more market share, whatever. So you're kind of fucked. It's little wonder that the livestock industry has historically been riddled with boom and bust cycles. While the more sophisticated prediction models are being developed, this market efficiency is not circumventable. It's inherent in the biology of the animals, right? So as long as we're growing feed to cows, to raise those cows, to then kill for meat, we have to wait X number of years, and like there's nothing we can do about that. Even the fastest maturing chicken is subject to these relentless cycles. Today's chicken reached slaughter weight about 6 weeks after hatching, but the leg also needs to account for time in the shell and the hen's laying rate, meaning the broiler supply must be predicted 18 to 24 months in advance. So maybe you don't have a crystal ball for 3 years in the future, but you're still going to need one for, 1.5 to 2 years. In the agriculture industry, the animal agriculture industry, once production clock starts ticking, it can't be stopped. You can't put a barn full of chickens on pause at 5 weeks of age until the price of chicken rebounds. Right? So if the price suddenly crashes and you have all these chickens, you can't just wait until the price comes up to sell them. You're going to have to sell them at a loss. So only the biggest companies could weather the troughs, and they will quickly buy up the competitors who don't have the financial buffer in hard times. So either way, unless you're a big player in the space, you're fucked anyway. Compare this years-long lead time with that for plant-based or clean meat, where a manufacturing facility can have the finished product rolling off the line in hours or days. Guys, if I want a fucking burger, I want it now. I don't want to wait 5 years. I want it now. So if it only takes a few hours to manufacture this meat, nobody understands this. You can literally grow cells in hours. Maybe it takes 3 weeks, but that's still better than 3 years, right? So for plant-based meat, the raw materials, protein isolates, flours, flavorings, are typically dry powders with high stability, and they can be stored inexpensively for extended periods of time, ready at a moment's notice for on-demand use. The entire process from pre-treatment of the dry ingredients to the finished product takes only a few hours. Even products with more complex post-processing like smoking, marinating, it'll be ready to ship within a few days of starting the production line. So the efficiencies and the capital costs and just your time savings, because time is money, is just massive. It's massive. So the same will be true for clean meat, created by growing meat outside of the animal from a small cell sample, also called culture meat or cell-based meat. There's a lot of words for it. But once it's available through large-scale production, which many analysts expect will happen within the next decade or so, definitely within 10 years, this is going to be our main source of meat. It's no question. You can already buy it in Singapore today, and I'm going to go to Singapore to check it out. Really, the main big stumbling block is that we don't allow the sale of it here in Canada or the US. So most experts that are currently working in the clean meat industry estimate that producing a batch of 1,000 kilograms of meat will require 3 to 5 weeks. So it's pretty easy to predict the future 3 to 5 weeks out. Not as easy to predict the future in 3 years' time. If production facilities are operating the seed train continuously, they could harvest the finished product within a week. So once you set up enough production and you start the growing of your cells, you can time it so that you really have a new batch coming every week. Or if you increase production, You could just have meat rolling off the line every day. You're not waiting for these 3-year cycles, these 5-year cycles. Both plant and cell-based meat face far less formidable forecasting challenges. Manufacturers can rev up production in essentially real-time response to demand, meaning the system has far less waste, greater profitability, because you're not worried about, oh fuck, is my meat market going to crash and I'm just going to lose all this investment that I put in, right? Okay, number 2, the carcass balancing problem. In the meat industry, the carcass balancing problem describes how animal bodies are not proportioned to the ratios of products that humans actually demand. In fact, our culinary traditions have evolved to make disproportionate use of undesirable parts of the animal. Anyone go to wing night? Chicken breasts, for example, are the most versatile and meaty parts of a chicken, but we developed cultural traditions around chicken wings, even though they entail much greater inconvenience to obtain a relatively small amount of meat. I mean, I like wing night, it's fun, but when you really think about it, likewise, while most consumers would likely prefer a sirloin steak to a burger, right, would you rather go eat at a nice steak restaurant, or would you rather go to McDonald's? I know which one I prefer. Nearly 50% of a cow's carcass weight makes its way into ground beef, which comprises odds and ends after the finer cuts are trimmed away. So if you want good quality meat, you're gonna have to pay a lot for it because it's really only compromising a small part of the animal. Wings and burgers have become such an integral part of American cuisine that many would argue for their inherent value rather than see them as acquired tastes by virtue of their abundance, right? We have so much goddamn fucking chicken wings because we're trying to make chicken breasts. We have so much goddamn burgers because we're trying to eat steak. How much better would your life be if you only ate steak or if you only ate chicken breasts? Why go to McDonald's when you can go to the steakhouse, right? Your life is going to be so much better if you just cut out the shit and focus on the good stuff. But even with this cultural adaptation, millions of tons of meat, organs, bone, and other undesired carcass fractions are forced into extremely low value sectors such as animal feed and the chemicals industry, gums, glues. So some edible carcass parts can be matched with receptive buyers overseas, like, people sending a bunch of chicken feet to China, but this leaves the industry vulnerable to geopolitics and trade disputes, right? So if you don't like Xi Jinping, what are you going to do? You're just going to let your chicken feet rot, right? Simultaneously, several of these parallel industries are innovating away from animal origin materials and finding much higher performing alternatives. For example, Geltor has commercialized animal-free gelatin. An increasing number of pet food brands are now offering plant-based formulas, and not too long in the future, because there's some great companies which I will show you later on who are working on this, but soon we're going to have some incredible cell-cultured companies. They're already here, you just don't see them yet. Imagine how cuisine would change over time if consumers were at liberty to make their meat product sections purely on the cuts that they actually want to eat, right? So if you really thought about it, would you rather go for a steak? Would you rather go for a burger? The slaughter of a single cow produces only about 28 T-bone steaks, 10 sirloins, and 8 filet mignon. The order of the 29th T-bone, or the 9th filet, would drive the slaughter of an entire additional cow. Think about all the cost that goes into feeding, housing, processing, killing the cow just to get that incremental T-bone steak, right? That's a lot of waste and you're losing your money. You're burning it and shitting it out the door. But plant or cell-based meat manufacturers can produce meats in the exact ratios at which they are selling. There is no carcass to balance. The inefficiencies just fucking blow my mind. It's amazing. Adapting swiftly to shifting demand across species. Meat companies, large and small, typically specialize in 1 to 3 species. You got chicken, cows, and pigs. You're going to be like the bacon company. You make your ham and your bacon and your ground pork and all that shit. This lack of diversity is due, in large part, to the fact that the production and rendering process for each of these species is radically different. Everything from feed composition, barn layout, transport vehicle configuration, slaughterhouse equipment, staffing, it's all completely different for chicken, turkey, cows, pigs. A single barn or slaughterhouse cannot switch from one species to another, not at the scale at which the meat industry currently operates. Even for a fishing fleet, the navigational capacity and range of the vessel, the types of nets and the hauling machinery on board, and the downstream processing look completely different when harvesting salmon versus tuna versus anchovies, right? You need to have specialized tools in order to rear or catch or process the meat that you want today, right? So you have to put a ton of money into these super specialized processes and equipment which you can't really use for anything else. Those who control the meat and fish industries have a vested interest in maintaining consumer demand for the particular species in which they have specialized and in ratios that match their current facilities and infrastructure. So, you don't like cod? Too bad for you. You don't like shrimp? Too bad for you. You know, you gotta eat what the companies give you. You don't have the freedom to choose what you want. But for plant-based and clean meat, the difference between producing beef or pork or even salmon is pretty small. The major ingredients are likely to be quite similar or even identical in some cases, while the differences will come down to subtle changes in the flavoring and production equipment settings that dictate qualities like the firmness or the juiciness. A single production line can switch from a shredded chicken product to a flaked tuna product with relatively little adaptation or downtime. This allows for a wider product range from a single company and yet again much greater responsiveness to consumers. You can have some choice. If you want to eat shrimp or salmon or steak, you can just buy it from the same company. It's pretty easy. If there's a spike in plant-based ground beef for the 4th of July barbecues, facilities can increase the number of lines cranking out this product for just a few weeks. Cell-based meat is designed to be similarly nimble, right? You just grow a few more cells. It's pretty easy. Add a couple more weeks. The potential flexibility of plant and cell-based meat producers to switch from one product to another within a species category. If I want to grow loin or spare rib or salmon, I can do that in my factory. I have a single factory that can produce any kind of meat that I want. Or if I want to try something a bit different, maybe I want to grow some antelope, some moose. I can much more fluidly and inexpensively convert between species than conventional meat producers. And that gives me substantial market advantages, right? Because I don't have to get rid of all my shit equipment that is super specialized. If I decide, you know what, I want to ramp down my tuna production and focus a bit more on beef production, I can just do it. Add to this a shorter production cycle that facilitates real-time response to demand, and it becomes clear that plant-based and, more importantly, clean meat producers are well equipped to make judicious use of their production lines and to operate much more consistently within their ideal profit margin. Now, a lot of leftists are going to be like, oh, the planet, oh, we need this for that. But arguably, the market efficiency gains will be extremely beneficial for the bottom line. You are going to be so much more profitable if you build out a fermentation plant to grow meat like you make beer than if you were to invest your money into killing a few cows. You're going to make so much more money. It is unbelievable. So while everyone rails against climate change, which is a big issue, it's really not what's going to drive this change. What's going to drive this change is when people and smart business people wake up and say, oh, you know what? why am I spending millions of dollars and wasting 5-10 years of my life to get a bit of beef on the table when I can just spool up some fermentation tanks and grow the meat in a couple weeks? More money, more time to live your life, less bullshit to deal with, right? So it's pretty good. Win-win. Thanks for watching.